At Christmas dinner, my stepmother Linda stood up in front of 25 family members and announced that I would never inherit anything from this family because I wasn't real blood. 3 days later at Dad's will reading, the lawyer revealed I was inheriting the entire $2.8 million estate while Linda got nothing. Her face went completely white, and what happened next destroyed her credibility forever. Before I dive into this story of holiday family drama and the most shocking inheritance revelation imaginable, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. Hit that like button if you've ever had step-family members treat you like an outsider with no claim to family assets, and subscribe to True Revenge for more stories of inheritance assumptions backfiring spectacularly. My name is Rebecca, I'm 32 years old, and until my father's will reading last week, I believed my stepmother Linda when she told me I had no real place in our family's financial future. This story begins with years of subtle exclusion from family inheritance discussions and ends with legal documents that proved my father's true feelings about who deserved his legacy. My father, Robert, married my mother when I was 3 years old and adopted me legally when I was 5. My biological father had left when I was an infant, and Robert was the only father I ever knew. He raised me as his own daughter, never making me feel different from a biological child. When I was 12, my mother died in a car accident. The loss devastated both Dad and me, but we supported each other through the grief and grew even closer during the difficult months that followed. 2 years after Mom's death, Dad met Linda through mutual friends. Linda was a 45-year-old widow with 2 teenage children from her previous marriage, stepbrother Marcus, who was 16, and stepsister Kelly, who was 14. Dad and Linda dated for a year before getting married when I was 15. The transition to a blended family was challenging, but Dad assured me that Linda and her children would enhance our family rather than replace what we'd lost. Initially, Linda seemed genuinely caring toward me. She included me in family activities, helped with school projects, and appeared to understand the important bond between Dad and me. But as the years passed, Linda began making subtle comments about family dynamics and my position within the newly blended household. "Blood is thicker than water," Linda would say when discussing family loyalty or support. "Real family connections are different from other relationships. Marcus and Kelly have always been my priority," she'd mention during conversations about college planning or financial decisions. "A mother's responsibility is to her own children first." These comments seemed like natural expressions of parental love at the time, but they established a pattern where Linda positioned her biological children as having stronger family claims than I did. When Marcus and Kelly graduated high school, Dad generously paid for their college expenses without hesitation. He covered tuition, room and board, and living expenses for both of them, treating them exactly as he would have treated his biological children. I was grateful that Dad extended such generous support to my step-siblings, and I assumed I would receive similar assistance when I reached college age. But when I started applying to universities, Linda began making comments about the financial burden of supporting multiple children through higher education. "Robert has already spent so much money on Marcus and Kelly's education," Linda pointed out during family discussions about my college plans. "It's expensive to put 3 children through school. Maybe Rebecca should consider state schools or community college to start," Linda suggested. "More affordable options might be appropriate given everything we've already invested in education." Dad ultimately did pay for my college education, but Linda's comments had planted seeds of doubt about whether I should expect the same level of financial support that Marcus and Kelly had received. After college, as Linda's children established their careers and started families, Linda began making more direct comments about inheritance and family financial planning. "Marcus and Kelly need to understand their inheritance expectations," Linda would say during family gatherings. "They should know what to expect from the family estate. Robert and I have been discussing our will and making sure his biological legacy is properly planned for," she'd mention in conversations with relatives. The phrase biological legacy was particularly telling. Linda seemed to view family inheritance as something that should flow to biological relatives rather than adopted or chosen family members. When Dad turned 65 and began discussing retirement planning more seriously, Linda's comments about inheritance became more explicit and more exclusionary. Rebecca has had a good life and education thanks to Robert, Linda would tell extended family members. But when it comes to inheritance, blood family comes first. Marcus and Kelly are Robert's real family now, she'd say. They should inherit the family business and property since they're carrying on the family name. Linda's constant emphasis on real family and blood connections was hurtful, but I assumed it reflected her natural desire to secure her children's financial future rather than any deliberate attempt to exclude me. Dad never participated in these conversations about biological legacy or real family, and he consistently treated me as his daughter in all practical matters. But he also didn't directly contradict Linda's implications about inheritance priorities. Last year, Linda's comments about my place in the family inheritance became more pointed and more public. During Marcus's wedding reception, Linda gave a speech about family legacy and how proud she was that Robert's true heirs were building families and carrying on traditions. Marcus represents the continuation of Robert's family line, Linda declared to the wedding guests. It's wonderful to see the biological legacy being preserved through the next generation. The implication that I was not part of Dad's biological legacy or true family line was clear to everyone present, including me. When Kelly announced her pregnancy a few months later, Linda's comments about family inheritance became even more explicit. Robert is so excited about having a biological grandchild, Linda told relatives during the baby shower. It's different when the baby carries your actual DNA and family bloodline. This grandchild will inherit the family legacy, Linda continued. Real bloodline connections are what matter for passing down wealth and property. Linda's constant emphasis on biological and real bloodline connections was creating a narrative where my adoption and Dad's love for me were somehow less legitimate than his relationships with her children. 6 months ago, Dad was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. The diagnosis was devastating, but the doctors were optimistic about treatment options and his prognosis for recovery. During Dad's cancer treatment, Linda began making more direct statements about inheritance planning and my exclusion from family wealth. Rebecca needs to understand that she won't inherit anything significant, Linda told my aunt during one of Dad's chemotherapy appointments. The estate will go to Robert's real family. I've been helping Robert update his will to reflect current family priorities, Linda mentioned to several relatives. He wants to make sure his biological legacy is protected. Rebecca has had advantages and opportunities thanks to Robert, Linda would explain. But when it comes to inheritance, Marcus and Kelly are the rightful heirs. Linda's public statements about my exclusion from inheritance were painful and embarrassing, especially during a time when I was focused on supporting Dad through his cancer treatment. But Dad seemed to be responding well to treatment, and I didn't want to create family conflict by confronting Linda about her inheritance comments while he was dealing with serious health issues. 3 weeks ago, Dad's condition suddenly worsened. A routine scan revealed that the cancer had spread more aggressively than expected, and the doctors revised his prognosis significantly. Dad passed away peacefully 5 days later, surrounded by family members who loved him deeply. The funeral was beautiful, with hundreds of people attending to honor Dad's life and his impact on our community. The grief was overwhelming, but I was grateful for the outpouring of love and support from people whose lives Dad had touched. Linda organized most of the funeral arrangements, and she positioned herself as the primary spokesperson for Dad's legacy and family wishes. Robert was so proud of Marcus and Kelly, Linda told attendees during the reception. He loved watching his children build successful lives and families. Linda's comments about Dad's children seemed to refer exclusively to Marcus and Kelly, despite the fact that Dad had raised me as his daughter for nearly 30 years. 2 days after the funeral, Linda called to inform me about Dad's will reading. The lawyer wants to meet with family members on Friday to read Robert's will, Linda told me. I think you should attend since Robert may have left you some small personal items. Linda's tone suggested that my inheritance would be minimal and symbolic rather than substantial. Her expectation that I might receive some small personal items reflected her belief that Dad's significant assets would go to Marcus and Kelly. The will reading was scheduled for Friday afternoon at Dad's attorney's office. The lawyer, Mr. Harrison, had handled Dad's legal affairs for over 15 years and was familiar with our family dynamics. Linda arrived at the appointment with Marcus and Kelly, all three of them dressed formally and carrying notebooks as if they were attending an important business meeting. I came alone, still processing my grief and uncertain about what to expect from Dad's final legal arrangements. Mr. Harrison began the meeting by expressing his condolences and explaining the will reading process. Robert's will is comprehensive and reflects careful consideration of his wishes for asset distribution, Mr. Harrison explained. He updated the document recently to ensure it reflected his current intentions. Linda smiled confidently, apparently assured that the recent updates would favor her children as she had predicted. "Let me begin with the primary beneficiary designations," Mr. Harrison continued, opening Dad's will document. "To my beloved daughter Rebecca, who has been the light of my life since the day I became her father, I leave my entire estate, including all real property, financial assets, business interests, and personal belongings." The room fell completely silent. Linda's confident expression disappeared as Mr. Harrison continued reading. "The total value of the estate is approximately $2.8 million, including the family home, rental properties, investment accounts, and life insurance proceeds." Linda's face had gone completely white. Marcus and Kelly were staring at Mr. Harrison as if he had made a terrible mistake. "I'm sorry, there must be some error," Linda interrupted. "Robert told me that Marcus and Kelly would inherit the majority of the estate." Mr. Harrison looked at Linda with professional patience. "Mrs. Patterson, I can assure you that this will accurately reflect your husband's wishes. He updated it just 6 months ago and was very specific about his intentions." "What about Marcus and Kelly?" Linda asked, her voice rising with panic. "What did Robert leave for his stepchildren?" Mr. Harrison consulted the document again. "Marcus and Kelly Patterson are each receiving $10,000 from the estate, with a note expressing gratitude for being part of the family." Linda stood up abruptly, her face flushed with anger and disbelief. "This can't be right," she declared. "Robert promised that his real family would inherit everything. Rebecca is just adopted, she's not his biological daughter." Mr. Harrison's expression became stern. "Mrs. Patterson, Robert was very clear about his reasoning for these inheritance decisions. Would you like me to read his explanatory statement?" Linda nodded, apparently hoping that Dad's explanation would support her belief that some mistake had been made. Mr. Harrison found the relevant section of the will. Robert wrote, "I am leaving my entire estate to Rebecca because she is my true daughter in every way that matters. While I love Marcus and Kelly and am grateful they became part of my family through my marriage to Linda, Rebecca has been my daughter since she was 3 years old." Mr. Harrison continued reading Dad's statement. "I have observed Linda's repeated comments about biological legacy and real family over the years. These comments have made it clear that Linda does not consider Rebecca to be my legitimate heir or rightful inheritor of family wealth." Linda's face was now completely pale as Mr. Harrison read Dad's reasoning for the inheritance decisions. "I want to make absolutely clear that Rebecca is my chosen heir because she is my real daughter. Biology does not determine family, love, loyalty, and commitment do. Rebecca has been all of these things to me for 29 years. The final portion of Dad's statement was the most devastating for Linda's assumptions about inheritance. Linda's constant emphasis on blood relationships and biological legacy has been hurtful to Rebecca and contrary to my values about what makes a family. I am leaving my estate to Rebecca to ensure that my daughter inherits what she deserves as my real heir." Mr. Harrison closed the will document and looked around the room. Robert also included a provision stating that if Linda contests this will based on claims about biological versus adopted relationships, she will forfeit the $50,000 bequest he initially planned to leave her. Linda sat in stunned silence as the implications of Dad's will became clear. Not only had she been wrong about my exclusion from inheritance, Dad had specifically chosen me as his sole heir in part because of her treatment of me. "Rebecca," Mr. Harrison said, turning to me, "your father wanted me to give you this letter privately, but given the circumstances, I think it's appropriate to share it with everyone present. He handed me an envelope with my name written in Dad's handwriting. I opened the letter with trembling hands and read it aloud. My dearest Rebecca, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone and you're learning about my final gift to you. I wanted you to know that you have been the greatest joy of my life since the day I became your father. You are my daughter in every way that matters, and I am proud of the woman you've become. I know Linda has made comments over the years about inheritance and biological family. I hope this will shows you how wrong she has been about your place in my heart and my life. You are my chosen heir because you are my real daughter, and everything I've built should go to you. Please use this inheritance to build a beautiful life and remember that you were loved completely by your father. Love always, Dad. By the time I finished reading Dad's letter, I was crying tears of grief and gratitude. Linda and her children sat in shocked silence, processing the reality that all their assumptions about inheritance had been completely wrong. Linda made one final attempt to challenge Dad's decision. This will was obviously influenced by Rebecca, Linda claimed. Robert wouldn't have excluded his stepchildren without manipulation. Mr. Harrison's response was firm and final. Mrs. Patterson, I met with Robert multiple times over 6 months as he considered these inheritance decisions. He was completely competent and specific about his reasoning. Rebecca was not present for any of these discussions, and Robert made these choices independently. Linda gathered her things and left the office without speaking to me, followed by Marcus and Kelly, who seemed as stunned as their mother by the inheritance revelations. I spent another hour with Mr. Harrison reviewing the practical aspects of inheriting Dad's estate and beginning the legal processes for transferring ownership of properties and assets. The drive home gave me time to process what had happened. Dad's will had not only provided financial security, it had validated my place in his heart and his family in ways that Linda's years of criticism had tried to undermine. I realized that Dad had been carefully observing Linda's comments about biological legacy and real family, and that her exclusionary behavior had actually motivated him to ensure that I received everything he had worked to build. The inheritance also revealed that Dad had understood the pain Linda's comments caused me, even though he had never directly addressed her behavior during family gatherings. The aftermath of the will reading created lasting changes in my relationship with Linda and her children, as well as my understanding of what Dad truly valued about family. Linda never spoke to me again after the will reading. She moved out of Dad's house within 2 weeks, using her own savings to relocate to an apartment across town. Word of the inheritance details spread among our extended family, creating significant criticism of Linda's years of comments about biological legacy and real family. I can't believe Linda was so wrong about Robert's intentions, my uncle said during a family gathering. She spent years telling everyone that Rebecca wouldn't inherit anything, and it turns out Robert left her everything. Several family members approached me to apologize for not challenging Linda's exclusionary comments over the years. I should have spoken up when Linda made those comments about blood family, my aunt admitted. It was obvious that Robert loved you as much as any father could love a daughter. Marcus and Kelly's reactions to the inheritance were mixed. They seemed disappointed about the financial outcome, but also somewhat embarrassed by their mother's behavior and predictions. Rebecca, I'm sorry about how Mom talked about inheritance over the years, Kelly said to me privately. I didn't realize how hurtful those comments were or how wrong she was about Dad's feelings. The most meaningful response came from extended family members who shared memories of Dad's pride in me and his consistent treatment of me as his beloved daughter. Robert always talked about you as his greatest accomplishment, my cousin told me. He was so proud of your education, your career, and the person you became. This inheritance just reflects what everyone already knew about how much he loved you. 6 months later, I'm using Dad's inheritance to honor his memory and build the life he wanted for me. I've kept the family home where I grew up and where Dad and I shared so many important conversations and experiences. I've also established a scholarship fund in Dad's name for adopted children pursuing higher education, reflecting his belief that family is created through love and commitment rather than biology. The experience taught me several important lessons about family, inheritance, and the difference between chosen and biological relationships. First, family members who constantly emphasize biological connections over chosen relationships may be revealing their own insecurities about their place in family dynamics. Second, true parents demonstrate their love through consistent actions and choices over many years, not through genetic connections or legal obligations. Third, inheritance decisions often reflect the deceased person's assessment of family relationships and values rather than conventional expectations about biological priority. Most importantly, the experience reinforced that being chosen as someone's child is often more meaningful than being born into a family, because chosen relationships are based on deliberate love rather than biological accident. Today, I'm grateful for Dad's love and the inheritance that validated my place as his real daughter. Linda's predictions about my exclusion from family wealth were not only wrong, they actually motivated Dad to ensure that I inherited everything he had built. The will reading has become something of a family legend about the importance of treating all children with equal love and respect, regardless of biological connections. If you've experienced step-family members questioning your inheritance rights or treating you as less legitimate than biological relatives, know that true parents recognize chosen family as equally valid and valuable. Document your parents' expressions of love and commitment, and don't let others' emphasis on biological connections undermine your understanding of your place in your chosen family. If you enjoyed this story of Christmas inheritance drama and will reading vindication, please give this video a like and subscribe to True Revenge for more stories of family assumptions about biology and inheritance backfiring completely. Share your own experiences with step-family inheritance issues in the comments below. Have you ever had relatives suggest that adoption or chosen family relationships are less legitimate than biological ones? Remember that real family is created through love, commitment, and choice rather than genetics, and sometimes the most satisfying response to people who question your family legitimacy is legal documentation that proves how wrong they were. Thank you for listening to my story of holiday drama and inheritance justice. Sometimes the best response to people who say you'll never inherit anything is a will that leaves you everything.